Sensor Global saves lives with automatic compliance and manages smoke alarms, gas and water leak detection with 24/7 remote management. It provides complete control, reduced risks, and improved compliance for property managers. To find out more, speak to Anthony Booth or head over to sensorglobal.com.
All right.
Welcome to the listeners today. I think you're a return guest. We've got Kasey Lawrence from the Rental Network joining us. Kasey, welcome.
Thank you, Ash.
I always have to read your name when, like, on writing, because I know so many Kaseys.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get you confused, so I always have to actually read it. The same with the Rental Network. There's a couple of agencies in Perth that have got a similar name, and so I have to physically read it so I get it.
Concentrate
on it. It's lovely to see you again. I'm very excited to be talking about our topic today, which is best practice for everyday PM tasks. And best practices are my favourite word. Those people that know me will know that I'm a real best practice type person. I'm probably not the person that my team come to me with more like legislative questions. Like I love best practice, because best practice for me is where everyone's happy, all parties have got what they want out of it. And I associate the words best practice with very mutually negotiated. It's good for everyone and everyone's happy.
All the boxes are ticked. Yeah.
All the boxes are ticked. And so that's my definition of best practice. Is that like what do you hear when you sort of hear the word best practice?
Yeah, best practice to me is, I guess, ticking all the boxes and preventing problems from happening. So, yeah, benefiting both parties for sure, but making sure that you are dotting your I's and crossing your T's, so that back to proactive property management, I guess, 101, just being proactive and trying to prevent potential issues from arising by following these best practice steps.
Yeah, I like that actually. So it's best practice so that we don't have to necessarily start dictating the legislation and the act and all of that.
I think we don't have to fix anything. Yeah.
And when you start having to dictate it all, I feel like that's when like problems can come up.
Attention, yeah.
They get defensive, don't they?
Yeah, 100% for sure.
So you go into offices currently in your line of work. Actually, tell us, everyone, a little bit about what you currently do with your business and how you help other business owners and property managers to start off with.
Yeah, for sure. So there's two, I guess, main arms to my business, the training side and the consulting side. With the consulting side, that covers all aspects of property management in terms of setups, existing, scaling, wherever you are in that range. I will go in and, so for example, I've helped some sales or development-based businesses lately set up a rental arm. So then we will go through all systems procedures, setting up all the software. Already established businesses, I'll go in and go over their best practice. Do they have any? Let's set them up, systems, procedures, everything. I'm a stickler for a checklist, love them. So just making sure that everything is put in place for the agency to, first of all, maximise their profitability, make sure their clients are happy, their staff is happy, but also nothing's getting left open to liability on the agency or the client, which is where the best practice comes in. And then the training, I train all aspects of property management as well, which includes, a lot of best practice for sure, complaint prevention, reducing stress, everything to make the day-to-day life as happy and enjoyable as possible for the property manager, but so the clients are getting the best service as well.
So I can imagine getting into setting up new offices is quite an interesting space. And I'm so glad business owners have people like you to actually do that, because I imagine that a lot of them probably just think they'll just wing it and do it. So it's great that there's an opportunity for them to reach out to you to sort of get it all ready from the start, which is great. With the property management teams, where are you seeing, I know you've got like a lot of sort of specialty focus points that you can come into offices. What's the biggest pain point you're seeing property managers needing help with? Like, where do you get called out the most for? What topics?
Staff turnover, like not being able to retain staff. Why? So finding out what's going on within the business as to why staff aren't staying. There could be client loss as well. So there's a lot of, they're losing a lot of business, figuring out why. But just also, I guess, lack of education within the property management team, a lack of system structure and support. Everyone's kind of all over the place. So they just want it tightened up, reeled in, and everyone like marching from the beat of the same drum.
Do you find that there's more problems in the larger agencies or the smaller agencies? And I'm asking because to see whether other people are like me. I will be the first to say I never had processes. Everyone just did their own thing. They managed their portfolio the way they want. And then it was working fine. But then we hit, after 500 properties, we were like, I better start getting a little bit more serious with how we're doing things and some more consistency. So for me, I didn't actually put that in place, the processes and procedures and that unity till after 500 properties. Is that normal, or where are you people get that pain point?
There's a lot of that for sure. And I feel like the bigger the agency, the bigger the beast it is to, I guess, tame and rein in. So if I can give any piece of advice out there is to set those foundations from the very beginning so that you don't have to then try and re-educate staff or have them now working from a different process or system. But it is so the way, like you will start new, and it is easy to manage when you've only got a handful of properties. And then you're kind of just in survival mode going through the motions until you do wake up one day and you're like, oh God, I am at 500. It's all over the place. Let's fix it. So it's definitely fixable, but it's a much bigger task to fix when the agency's bigger, obviously.
And I guess that's the thing, like we only tend to call in trainers and consultants when there's a pain point. And we really need to change that, me included, to how about you getting a coach or a trainer or consultant while everything's going really good to do a bit of a health check on your portfolio and make those tweaks when everything's going good, instead of us only calling you in when there's a problem. And I guess it even reminds me of even like relationship counselling. You know, you go see a psychologist or a relationship counsellor when you've got a problem. But not many people go and see one when everything is going really well in the relationship, just to make sure we keep it okay. It's crazy,
100%.
isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I'm all for, building those foundations from the very beginning or as early as possible, so that even when staff are coming on board, you've got a proper onboarding process that everyone knows that this is how we do this task, this is how we do leasing, this is how we do our routines. There's uniformity there with the clients too, that no matter which property manager they have step into the portfolio, when it comes to leave and things like that, they're still getting that same level of service.
And I guess best practice is also a very subjective term, because like in my office, best practice might look different to another office who has best practice. So I guess it makes sense that if you have a new team member coming into your office, their version and your version of best practice is going to be different. So how do we teach that? So we won't go into too much detail, because if people need this, and they can call you and book you in for a consultancy and training for it, which I assume you can do in person and on Zoom all around Australia.
Yes, for sure.
Great. And I mentioned that, do you know why? Because in WA, I love showcasing some coaches and trainers that are interstate. So I feel like if you're in WA listening to this, really reach out to Kasey, because it's really nice to sort of find out what you guys are doing, over East, and how it can help benefit our offices, as opposed to finding someone in our own backyard. I know that sounds really weird, but I like to venture out.
It's so true though. Even property managers who have been in an agency for a really long time, it's so beneficial for them to go to networking events and be around other property managers, because they have only generally known one way of doing things. So their experience level can sometimes be a lot less than what their years are in the industry, if that makes sense, because they've only been in one agency. So getting around people and learning how other people do things is so beneficial.
Yeah, totally. The I guess coming back to the onboarding, which is really probably the best time to sort of have a system and a plan in place for onboarding and making sure that the new staff coming in know what your office best practices are, and having something set up. Is there, I know I'm putting you on the spot with this question, is there any fancy program that people are using, or is it a very manual, like are they using video, like a manual book? Like what does that actually look like?
Yeah, I guess it depends on where you're at in terms of your software as well. So some of the best practices can fall in line with your office systems and procedures in terms of like leasing, for example. Here's our best practice for leasing, but it also is very cohesive with the office process and procedure for leasing. So in terms of that, it could be within your property management software. Otherwise, I do see the old school manuals that are now electronic. And what else was there that I had recently? Videos, like, doing actual Loom recordings and things like that, or induction via Zoom and recording that. So they've got that there for future reference if they need.
And so let's just use that. I'm going to get to where I'm going in a minute with the program that I've started using. But with the video looms, are they just being potentially saved and then they have access, like, do they have access to them? Like, on what platform are they putting these videos in for people to watch?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Many real estate agents across Australia confidently refer Property Insurance Plus to their clients as they recognise the price and benefit value of their policy combined with the client-focused service they deliver. They offer a comprehensive building and landlord insurance facility and have formed a powerhouse to present the very best in investment property insurance. Contact PIP today to find out more.
They'd put them in their Google Drives generally. Yeah.
Okay, so actually that's a really good way of doing it. So you have a Google Drive set up, because I like to really give people practical advice on how to do it. So you have a Google Drive set up, and it might be property management induction. You could have one for sales rep induction and things like that. And then that has all the videos and training. Checklist. That's a good idea.
Yeah, so you'd have like similar to when I would do like a training presentation, I would have my physical presentation there that I would go through with the person on the other end or the group. Similar concept. So you would have your best practice presentation there, and then I am there talking you through it as we go through. I go through the Loom or the Zoom, however you want to have it set up, and that recording then goes into the Google Drive for future reference.
I like it. That's good. Yeah. And that's a pretty good low cost option. So where I'm getting at with that question was, have you heard of Workmetrics?
No.
Okay, so I'm just starting to use it and play around. It's I won't lie, it's a little bit complicated to set up, but I think once it's set up, it's going to be amazing. And what it does, and again, I'm only really setting this up as best practice as our team gets larger, and I need to take, that side of things a bit more serious. Yeah. But it allows those training videos and staff to walk through a course and sends them the automatic intro email on day 1, and then it has an email on day 3, and then encourages them to work through an induction course. So it prompts them to watch the videos.
Yeah.
Which you can probably get from that versus the Google Drive, but one you've got to pay a lot more for, and the other one you don't. And so I'm trialing that at the moment. So if anyone's sort of interested, feel free to reach out with Workmetrics, and I can sort of let you know how that's going, and I can put people in touch with others that are using Workmetrics as well. But it just is something that I'm just really learning about and exploring, and probably the best way to put those best practices in your office.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we've talked about ways to set up best practices in your office and how to induct them with new team. Can we just cover off one best practice when it comes to leasing? I'm really curious to how best practices look. You're in Victoria, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, so over in Perth, do you think best practice can be like for leasing, for example. Is that something that would look very, very similar for all Victorian agents, or definitely you'd go into an office and customize it as, you know, giving them a few options of what it would look like? If we could just sort of talk about the leasing side, for example.
The leasing side, I don't think that needs to be customized for every office. I do see it very different across a lot of offices that I go in. And then I do streamline that within that office to what, in my opinion, through my experience, is best practice. Do you want me to go into like the literal steps?
Yeah. So of course, so that would be probably different based on size. Would that be fair to say?
No, not really. So so based on like your renter or your tenant has given their notice to vacate, what's best practice now here with regards to leasing that property? So some agencies here will wait until the tenant's vacated before they even begin advertising on the property, which I don't believe is best practice for the agency or the client or the property manager, really. You're just putting yourself under additional stress now that you've got a vacant property. But best practice is to, in my opinion, and it's different in every state, obviously, with legislation and whatnot, but advertising, like letting the owner know about the notice to vacate within 24 hours of receiving it, for sure. Some properties, or some states now have legislation where you have properties that need to meet minimum standards or have certain standards before it can legally be leased out. So making sure the property is meeting those minimum standards before you even begin advertising. When you do begin advertising, having an open for inspection already scheduled, so the listing goes live with an open already booked, so that's obviously then reducing the workflow coming through to the property manager in terms of having to respond to those generic. And then making sure your applications are reviewed and presented to the owner within 24 hours of receiving them, because there is a lot of panic within the rental market at the moment. So renters and tenants are putting in multiple applications on properties. So they do take basically the first one that's offered to them. So if we're delaying processing and presenting those applications to owners, we're potentially missing out on those applicants and having a property for lease or vacant for longer than it needs to be. But yeah, definitely getting it online ASAP as soon as you've gotten that notice to vacate. So you've got that, generally 4-week period to work within before it becomes vacant. And then you've got loss of rent, loss of agency commission, more stress on the renters now trying to get it leased because you've got a stressed owner breathing down your neck because they've got a vacant property. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, actually, I probably need to be putting in formal best practices for my team with that. I was going to just cut straight to the chase with I'm going to have a coughing fit in a second. Hold on.
That's all right.
That was just a slight pause. I may or may not edit that out for people that are watching. Sorry. But yeah, no, I was just going to go straight to the chase with in terms of the actual inspections. And I guess it's so easy for us to miss those very intricate starting points, like when the minute you get that notice to vacate.
Yeah.
And isn't it funny, as a business owner, I just assume that that's normal and that all my team are doing it. But have I put something formal in place for that?
Yeah.
I actually haven't, and I actually don't think we've even talked about it, which is, a good reminder for me that that I actually probably haven't formally told them that that's what's expected. I just assume that they have, and I don't get complaints from any landlords either about it, so I just assume. But you know what, that's probably not the best way to do it. So very good reminder for me. And I think that I like, you could even delve a little bit deeper into that with the advertising and what's expected from a marketing point of view.
100%.
Does every property have to have a virtually staged photo? Do you use only the front photo is that your main shot? Like, I don't personally like front photos being the main shot of the house. But, sometimes that might be a rule. In WA, we've got a few agents, and I don't know if this is happening But best practice can look a little bit different when it comes to leasing, in that our best practice, well, it's not actually even best practice. Our office, we like to do home opens and see everyone first and then have the application submitted afterwards. But then I know some really great agents where they actually do their applications first, shortlist them, and then do a private appointment for the person that's been like semi-accepted.
Yeah.
Until they give the final option. And the reason why they've chosen to do that is so that they're not putting their team under any mental stress with big home opens, being hounded at home opens, all of that pressure. And then it's also respecting tenants' time and not bringing them through a property that they probably had no chance of getting as well. Like, I can definitely see some really good benefits of working like that. The negative of it is that you may not be creating a demand for the property where people may or may not offer on their own back, because we can't encourage that. Offer more for a property. So, but that's really, to me, a bit of a minor issue. But it's still, it's very, it's just different ways. And I guess if you're listening to this, you can already hear there's so many different ways of just conducting a viewing versus, and also so many different ways of your advertising and your marketing. And you haven't physically told your staff, which I don't think I have, you're not going to be able to enforce it, encourage it in your
especially if they have worked in other offices as well, they will generally be coming with a different way of doing things. So until you do have that conversation and set it out, there is just the assumption that from you, the business owner, that they will do it your way, but there's been nothing that's been conversed on that.
Yeah, totally. So I think like there's definitely going to be offices that have got a team where they're able to maybe sit together, and maybe this is a really great idea at a team meeting each, week or month, whatever you do, to break down the processes and to have those conversations. Yeah, and write that checklist. That's definitely one option. The second option would be if you felt like that you potentially need a third party to have those discussions and workshops, because you might find that there might be someone in your team who might be a little bit more defiant. I would highly recommend that you reach out to Kasey, because to have someone like yourself be able to step in and actually facilitate these on a weekly, fortnightly or monthly basis and choose one topic makes sense, because what I like about getting someone into the business to do it is it's actually getting an expert who's very well versed with what best practice is with everybody and what's working with everybody. And 100%. So it's not coming in with just only one-sided, which in your office, it could
do it because I said so. It's very tried and tested. And when I do set up systems and procedures within offices, yes, it is I guess it starts out one way, for example, based on what I have, I guess, put into practice myself when I was managing big teams and running rental departments. I know what works successfully and makes everyone, I guess, as less stressed as possible. Every party, the client, the property manager, the agency. But sometimes in an office, like we will talk about it and have, an open table. They will ask questions about why we do it that way, or why are you recommending to do it that way and not that way. And I'll always explain why it's beneficial for them and the client and the agency to do it this way as opposed to that. So it's not just putting in systems or best practices for the sake of doing it. It's to get the best out of everyone in the situation and reduce everyone's stress levels so everyone gets a positive outcome as quickly as possible.
And the truth is that if you do it as a bit of a forced situation, your team just aren't going to use it. They're just going to do it because it's too hard. They don't believe in it. They don't agree with it. You really need everyone to be on board and to be happy with the outcome and happy with it, which you can
understand it.
Motivate them for that.
Well, understanding the reason behind it.
Last question for you. If you have, let's say you've set up these best practices and you've got them in your office, the next step is being accountable, making sure that they are being adhered to. So generally, is there someone in the office that's appointed to that role? Like, what sort of, how does that work? And is it just a matter of seeing that there's someone not doing it and saying, hey, that's not our office policy? Like, the accountability side, can you just touch on that for me?
Yeah, so just depending on the size of the agency, the bigger agencies will generally have a department manager in the office to oversee this kind of stuff. So then it's just a matter of me working with them on how to monitor, follow up, and manage. And then with the smaller offices, some of them do engage me then to do the ongoing management of it, which then might fall into, or does fall into, it's very similar to KPI management. So they will kind of be intertwined together. So I'll do the ongoing or monthly management of the KPIs, which the best practice falls into a part of that.
And is that like a bit like auditing?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And like you mentioned earlier, the health checks on portfolios and things like that. I've got a client that will have me in regularly to do the health checks on her portfolio, and that's not checking anyone in particular, just making sure that her portfolio has all the ducks in a row, as in her entire rent roll. There's nothing better than seeing a spreadsheet with green ticks all over it. And that's her office, the benefit of having those regular checks done. But with the KPIs, it is more of a portfolio management, I guess, making sure that everything's up to date and complying, I guess.
It's I had this event last week, which was with Pendium and Ono Legal, and it was about valuations of rent rolls and exit strategies and things like that. And one of the big things that I learned from it was the due diligence, how more responsibility should be put on sellers' due diligence as opposed to the buyer's due diligence. And from a seller's, like a business owner's point of view, the plan is that when you are ready to sell, that your portfolio is, packaged together with a nice big bow that you give to the buyer and say, here's everything, it looks great. And what they were suggesting was that if you have any holes in your business, and it could come down to best practices, policies, procedures, auditing, all of that, if you have any holes to pick, then buyers will potentially sort of see that hole and then look for another one and look for another one. And I like the idea of, like you said, regular sort of health checks on it, because if you are a business owner that, maybe plans to have your business for, like, let's say another 5 years, imagine having it so well run, regular audits, green ticks on everything as a package. That's going to look really good with providing it to a buyer to buy it, and you'll get the best dollar for your portfolio by having it all always clean, not just clean in the last 6 months because you're wanting to sell it, but just ongoing clean. And even when it comes to like missing fees and things like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Imagine there's a lot that you see, like, do you do fee auditing like that?
I do due diligence on sales for sure, and it is from the buyers that are getting the due diligence done. And I've seen both ends of the spectrum. One that is absolutely immaculate, that you can tell has been very well managed the entire time, and audited. And then there's the other ones that there's just holes and gaps everywhere. And as you're going through it, you're kind of thinking, gosh, like, this report is not going to reflect well at all for the seller, because there is so many holes in it that does leave room then for, the buyer to be offering less for it.
And I can imagine as a buyer, doing buyer due diligence, you find one hole, you're going to keep on looking. Like, that's your job, to find
everywhere. Yeah. It's like, get down the rabbit hole.
Well, absolutely. But if it's like, I've got a friend that does a lot of acquisitions, and overall, if she does the first couple of checks and it all looks good, she'll probably just say, yep, that's all good, and doesn't feel the need to check any more, except for her small portion of due diligence, because everything looked clean at the start. But if she was to find one, then she's looking for that second and the third. Really interesting space. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Kasey. I appreciate it. And I think hopefully that little snapshot of what best practice, entails, and the depth that it entails just for that leasing side of things, and that wasn't even going into the marketing, That should be enough for people to reflect on their business and their, have you had those conversations with your business, with your team? Are your team all consistent with how they're doing it? And maybe even ask each of them, what's your process for leasing? And if they all have a different answer, that is your cue to give Kasey a call and say, you know what, I think that I need you to do this exercise. Absolutely.
100%.
So Kasey's details will be on the show notes for this podcast. So everyone that's listening, thank you for tuning in, and I hope you got something out of it. And like I said, very small snippet of how Kasey can help you in your business now or in the future. Kasey, I'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me again. See ya.
MCG quantity surveyors are a favourite for property managers around Australia to help their clients maximise their cash flow through tax depreciation. I love how they place a strong emphasis on industry-leading education and data releases that they share with our community, and because they support the property industry so much, it is a no-brainer to use them for all your tax depreciation needs.